to zoom back in here for the second to last game, Texas A&M at Notre Dame. We have number 12 versus number 24 here at your Sports Outpost. And I thought that was kind of interesting to see that Notre Dame is favored. Yeah. After the week 1 loss there at Hard Rock Stadium against Miami, they are favored by 6.5 points. Pretty interesting to be quite honest with you. Last year, when the game occurred at College Station in 2024, it was 23-13. I thought that was a pretty entertaining game. That was actually our first watch long here for the channel, which was a lot of fun to just watch another Notre Dame game. To be quite honest with you, they're a pretty entertaining team. But for Texas A&M, pretty rough outing. 2 different quarterbacks going into this. Weigman and Riley Leonard are gone. Now you have Marcel Reed going at it with CJ Carr. Notre Dame leads the series 4-1, and I believe Texas A&M hasn't won since like the 80s, or maybe a little bit longer than that. It was a Cotton Bowl encounter. These two have definitely played each other in South Bend. Texas A&M obviously didn't win that one. And also the Aggies haven't beaten Notre Dame since 2001. Never again beat them away. That's the only win when they had a home and home series. I think it was 2000 and 2001 is when that happened. Mike Elko comes into this game 2-0. Last week they beat Utah State 44-22, and then the week before they beat UTSA 42-24. So similar scorelines. Defense looking a little leaky there. Marcus Freeman and his Fighting Irish are unfortunately 0-1. We did that watch along back in week 1 on Sunday. 24-27 loss against the Miami Hurricanes on the road. So gotta have a big win here, especially you don't want to be going 0-2 to start off the season. Not going to be a good look on the resume down the line to try and get back into the college football playoff, which it kind of felt like they barely made it on paper when you think about it. But, the committee, they want to put the Irish in no matter what because of the amount of money and eyes they draw to anything they touch, really. But the big question is, Marcel Reed ready to take the next step? Hasn't, again, won a game on the road as a starter. Last year when Marcel Reed started for the Aggies, again away, they lost 43-41 in 4 overtimes against Auburn, and they lost to South Carolina on the road 44-20. So this would be a big step if he can get a road win in South Bend to be his first ever as a starter. And I think he's gone off so far so good with a good start. But we'll have to again make plays against this Irish defense. If I'm not mistaken, he suffered a minor injury. Shouldn't be too big, and should be ready to go in this game again in South Bend against the Fighting Irish. So far, his completions rate percentage is 66.1. That's 54th in the country. If I'm not mistaken, CJ Carr is 1 ahead of him. And then he is 25th with his quarterback rating at 172.3. So it's definitely above average for sure. And that's so far in the first 2 weekends. He also has some 2 new targets that have been doing a great job in getting open for him. Mario Craver, or it might have been Mario Carver. I might have misspelled that in my notes. He's a transfer in from Mississippi State. So far, he's done a great job as an Aggie. In fact, I think he's about to surpass already his numbers in 2024. Just in the first 3 games, I think he only played about 5 or 6 for the Starkville Dogs there. He has 13 receptions, 9th in the country with 236 receiving yards. Casey Concepcion, not only a special teams menace, where he's already scored a touchdown there, but when he's receiving the ball, he has 9 receptions, 145 yards, and both of these guys have 3 receiving touchdowns. So I don't know if it's a big upgrade. They did lose Thomas to the portal this past season, but they have been able to replace more than enough production. Casey Concepcion technically has not gotten a touch from the ground, so maybe we see that in play here in the Aggies trying to use the speed that they have. And then on top of that, maybe they take a couple notes from that true freshman's performance. Malachi Toney, the great game he had against Notre Dame in his first contest as a Miami Hurricane. Some clever routes that we might see here for the Aggies going into this. Colin Klein, the former quarterback for Kansas State, I think was also the offensive coordinator there in Manhattan for the Wildcats. I believe this is his first or second season as Texas A&M's OC. He should be drawing up some good plays for, again, Casey Concepcion, the transfer from North Carolina State. But you guys, that's not the only good news for the Aggies. To be quite honest with you, the run game is still great as it was in 2024. 34th in the country, 5 yards per carry. That is absolutely disgusting. I know it's only Utah State and UTSA. UTSA, by the way, they have a great running back, maybe one of the best running backs in the country, to be quite honest with you, and Robert Henry Jr. Go check him out. But again, back to the Aggies. So far, carrying the ball for an average of 5 yards per carry. That's halfway to the first down marker. You got to love that. And they also have some depth in this offensive line, which we're going to talk about after I read this stat. They're 43rd in the country with 171.5 rushing yards per game. Zune, their starting left tackle, he had an injury last week. He should be ready to go. All the news that I've seen from him has been positive. But if he's questionable, even though I don't have him on the list in the injuries at the end of this section, they have depth. Mostly in the interior, I would say. They had Bourdon, or Bordeaux, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He stepped up at left tackle for the Aggies last week when Zune came out. But they were shifting both their guards and center. They have two centers, technically. Fa'ea, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And Nobu. They were both shifting those two guys at the guard and center positions. Then you have Reed Adams, the former transfer from Kansas. And I'm trying to remember the other guy on the left side, Bisantis, at left guard. So they have quite a few options in the interior if things are not going their way. So, you know, that's a good positive to have. And again, this running game is still good as it was last season. And then to bring up what they did against Notre Dame last year, they only had 146 yards in the 2024 encounter, a lot less than what they were averaging in that season. But again, that was the first game of the year for the Aggies. And then on top of that, the Irish D-line didn't look as pretty as it should against Miami. And they have a lot of new pieces that had to replace Botello, Cross the third, and Mills, who are gone out of the, again, Notre Dame lineup there in the front end of that defense. So there's some positives to continue to build on to that, again, great running game that they have. Another thing I guess you can kind of bring up in this kind of section here is that the Irish, with the game against the Hurricanes, their run defense wasn't the best. They're 52nd. That's only one game, again, to sample. That's, again, 52nd in the country, 127 yards given up. I think they're going to be giving more than that 146 and 127 that we're seeing from last year's encounter and so far this season. If it's close to 200 or north of 200, Notre Dame definitely going to be losing a game here in South Bend. Another thing to bring up in this is that CJ Carr, he did all right to salvage a decent performance against the Hurricanes on the road. He went 19 for 30, 221 yards passing, 7.4 on average when he let the ball go through the air. with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. That was kind of was his fault, kind of wasn't. It was behind the line of scrimmage. Ball bounced up off of bodies and then ended up getting picked off. But yeah, he definitely salvaged that game towards the end. They allowed him to rip it. And if they take shots more downfield rather than laterally, I think it's going to be a lot more successful. And that just is going to help out the running game, maybe adding some more play action and getting the running backs involved. Because if the OC continues the short passing game calls, or, Carr just playing it safe, it's going to be another one just like we saw against the Hurricanes, to be quite honest with you. And on top of that is if Notre Dame digs himself into this kind of hole again, is Carr going to be able to dig them out? He was very close in doing that on the road again against the Hurricanes, but doing it against this Texas A&M team that runs it a lot more than Miami and is going to be a lot more effective, they're going to be able to chew time off the clock if they know that that's the only way Notre Dame is going to be able to move the ball, or that the approach is that same from week 1 where they failed to win again away. For Notre Dame to avoid this, they got to establish run. You see the guy on the screen there, Jeremiah Love, basically got no love in touches on the road in week 1. They found ways to get him the ball through the air later on in that contest, but they just really have to establish run. Play to your bread and butter. Don't let your linemen get exposed with pass blocking way too much. I don't know the percentage of passes versus runs, but it just seemed definitely lopsided than the approach last season. Even though we know CJ Carr is more of a Sam Hartman kind of passer than a Riley Leonard kind of player, even though he can run the ball pretty well, he did score himself a touchdown there to tie the game, 24-24, and then Miami had that game-winning field goal. But again, they got to be able to not dig themselves in a hole by establishing a running game. But that brings us back to the offensive line for Notre Dame, who got exploited by the Hurricanes. Not a good sign. Not a good sign in the tackle positions between Wagner and Knapp there at the tackle positions. They just had bad outings, really, really bad outings. But Texas A&M, like we have said in the offseason, especially in that LSU preview that we did, they don't really get after the quarterback, but it seems so far, maybe because of the opponents that they have played, they're getting effective quarterback hurries and getting sacks. Cassius Howell, he had back-to-back sacks last game against the Utah State Aggies. And then TJ Searcy, who's a transfer in from Florida, he's had so far 2 quarterback hurries. So if those numbers continue to improve in this game, another bad time. But again, it's the approach of the Notre Dame offensive coordinator. And it really doesn't matter on how you break it down or the technique alignment or anything like that. It's going to be, again, Notre Dame winning leverage. It's as simple as that. The game will come down to Notre Dame rushing the ball effectively and Marcel Reed passing efficiently. So far, what I've seen from him and getting the ball in some pretty tight windows in those opening 2 games has been impressive. And then reading when a guy on man-to-man coverage when he's already beaten his defender, he's been really passing the ball effectively, and I really, really like it so far. Some injuries to bring up, some depth from the offensive line for the Aggies. Ruben Father-Ree, he hasn't technically played and then is not slated as a starter, but you have Zune, who went down last week. If you lose any tackles, you might not have the best replacement there at that position. He's questionable with a leg injury. And then for Notre Dame, he hasn't played yet for the offensive line for the Fighting Irish. Charles Jagsaw, he had an off-season injury back in July that he's still kind of recovering from. He's questionable with it. Again, technically it's undisclosed, but it was an ATV injury back in July. So I'm taking the road team here, yes. Even though they're not favored, I believe at the moment, or at least is what I have in my notes, 6.5 points. We're going to go with the Aggies 5-point difference to win this game in South Bend. I think the reason it's not going to be players, really, it's going to be the Irish OC failing with his game plan, because he failed already this season, and that trend I think is going to continue. As again, we're going to go with A&M by 5. As we zoom out.